Getting promoted to become a new boss is a very exciting transition, but at the same time, there are some very unique challenges, especially if you are now managing people who used to be your peers. And one of the key challenges is, how do you recalibrate those relationships? How do you navigate and manage your former peers, especially if they are not receptive to your ideas or if they haven't adjusted yet to you as their supervisor? There is a framework that I use when that is the situation happens, a framework where you can truly gain trust and respect from your former peers, right? Every single week, I lead a coaching mentorship program. And in this coaching program, a lot of executives come to me with problems like this. And there was one person in that my mentorship program where he was sharing that recently he was promoted to supervisor. Before that, he was on a team of 8 peers and he was in that department. And recently they promoted him, and now those other 8 peers are now his direct reports. He's their supervisor. And as a new manager, a new team leader, he saw some really significant and important changes that he wanted to make in the process. And he had some new ideas on how to reach the vision and the mission of the company. But as he was articulating this vision, and as he was wanting to lead his teams and manage the projects that they were on, he noticed that really early on in his new promotion, his direct reports were not receptive of his ideas. They had a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance to him being their new boss. And at the same time, as he was trying to share his ideas, it came across feeling like his direct reports were wanting to override their ideas, and they had a completely brand new perspective towards him. Right? And so this kind of scenario I've heard over and over again when there is promotion to a new boss, especially when the direct reports used to be colleagues at the same level and now there's a differential. In my 5-step framework, I'm going to give you an acronym so that it's easy to remember. And the acronym is C.L.O.U.T. C.L.O.U.T. So step number one on how you gain trust as a new boss for your former peers. Step number 1 is to communicate the transition. So what do we mean by that? There has to be a formal handing over of the position to you, because they were your colleagues, same level peers, and now you're their supervisor, you're their manager, you're their leader, and they're reporting to you. And that is a recalibration of relationship. The recalibration gets initiated by a formalizing of that promotion. Right? And sometimes companies have that in their processes. How they make the announcement, it could be from the human resources department, it could be from a senior leadership team, it could be your direct manager making that transition and that announcement, but there's some sort of formalization and articulation of, this is your new position, you've been promoted, right? And so a lot of companies do have that as a process. However, if you happen to be working for a company that does not really have a formalized process to announce your promotion, then that responsibility lies on you. So how can you create opportunities to let your direct reports know that this transition has been formalized, that this transition has been finalized, and now you are their leader and you're their manager? How can you make that announcement? But how can you make it in such a way where you're not in there to all of a sudden overhaul the way things used to be done, and you're not over there as well to become a boss over them, but how can you articulate it in such a way that you are for them, that you continue to be for them, and now that you're in a better position to help them succeed? Right? So that is step number 1, C, which starts with letter C, and that is to communicate the transition. And more importantly, as you're communicating your transition, don't forget as well to communicate with them how you plan to lead them and how you plan to lead that team. Step number 2 starts with the letter L, and L stands for listen for their values. As a new boss to your team, your former peers, it's really important to understand what's important to them. So what I teach in my mentorship program is to start by having individual meetings with your new direct reports, one-on-one individual meetings, and make them a meeting about them, not about you. Make it all about them. And the key to making it about them is to be able to utilize very curiosity-driven questions, but not just curiosity, they're caring and curious questions. What can you ask them in order to understand what their top priorities are? What can you ask them to understand what their individual values are? And more importantly, what can you ask them to understand for yourself as their new boss? How can you seek to understand what they feel their life purpose is? or the direction that they want to take their career paths. These are things that uncover their core values as individuals. And it is important that you understand what their core values are as individuals so that you can help to align their individual values with the values of the entire team and, more importantly, the values of the entire company. So seek to really understand and listen for what they share with you in answer to your questions of what their values are. And it might be also important to help open up that vulnerability and transparency by going and stating what it is. For example, call it out. There could be a difficulty in that transition. There could be some awkwardness because you used to be their peers. There could be an adjustment period, right? And call that out and ensure that you understand that there is an adjustment period. And that way you can demonstrate that you really get it, that you're not expecting them to, by the snap of the finger, to be able to make that adjustment, but when there are adjustments that need to be made, that you are understanding and you are very attuned to that, to the need of meeting those adjustments. So make sure that this is an opportunity for you to show your attunement to their experience of you previously as their colleague and now as a new boss. So that is step number 2. Listen for their values. Step number 3 starts with the letter O, and O stands for officiate a collaborative cadence. Right? So once you have listened for their values from the previous step, now this is the next step, number 3, which is to let them know, to be able to articulate and demonstrate that you are here to set them up for success. Because now you know what is a top priority for them. You also understand what their values are and the purpose they have for their life, and therefore the direction they want their career to head and which direction they want to go. So now this is your opportunity to be able to connect the dots and to articulate exactly how you are going to set them up for success. And that's the goal here. And this is what sets the foundation for a collaborative cadence. So a collaboration is a cadence. And here's what I mean by that. In order to collaborate with your direct reports, who used to be your peers, this is where you're establishing a cadence for movement into greater and greater collaboration. At this point, this is maybe your first week or the first 2 weeks of the formalization of you as their new leader. And now the cadence is, how can you ensure that that meaningful relationship continues to build momentum? And that's why it's important to have a cadence for meeting with them on a regular basis. Regularly, which means predictably every Monday morning, or predictably every third Friday afternoon of the month, and predictably, for example, every middle of the quarter of the current quarter, to establish for yourself regular communications within the group. And this is a cadence in which they can know exactly what is expected of them. And this is a cadence where there's opportunities at each of these meetings in order to articulate where they need greater support, where they need help from you, and where, for example, they are stuck. And there's an opportunity here in these cadences to establish collaboration where there's a celebration of learning from failure. This is your opportunity to create that level of transparency that each person on your team knows what they are accountable for, and they know what everybody else is accountable for, and they know what your accountabilities are as well, and your responsibilities to them as a leader. And as you have this collaborative cadence, set that culture in terms of being able to for you to be able to ask them for feedback on how you're doing as a leader. Because as a leader, one of the most top asked questions that I get asked is, how do I give my team feedback? When I see someone on my team and they're not quite performing their best, or if someone on my team is kind of resisting me as their leader, how do I give them that type of negative feedback? And my answer is always the same. If you want to be able to give feedback to your team, you must first be able to ask for feedback about your leadership. So this is how you set a foundation for a collaborative cadence, is first of all, by really clearly delineating how you're going to set them up for success, and more importantly, by continuously asking for feedback about your leadership first. And once you've asked for feedback enough times and they've given you enough feedback enough times, this is what creates the transparency and the vulnerability for you to be able to give them feedback as well. Step number 4 starts with the letter U, and U stands for uphold a culture of performance. As a new team leader and as a new supervisor, be very careful on how you set the culture. It's most important to make it a culture of performance. And what that means is that every person on your team holds their own responsibilities and the outcomes they are expected to produce for you and for the company at large. So when it comes to upholding that culture of performance, there are 3 ingredients for setting up that culture. And the 3 start with which stands for OMA. O is outcomes, and then you have metrics, and then you have accountability. OMA. Those are the 3 ingredients to set up a culture of performance. Let's start with outcomes. Outcomes means you are very clear in what the targets are, what the objectives are, what the outcomes are going to look like for every level, every time frame that you are in charge of. It could be 1 year time frame, it could be 1 quarter time frame, monthly time frames, weekly time frames, and the time frame of tomorrow or in a few days out. So ensure that you are clear on those objectives for your direct reports as well, going all the way out and drawing it back closer and closer to the day after. So those are objectives. The second one, we have objectives. The second one is metrics. Metrics means that there are key dashboard and there are key metrics and things that get measured in order for you and your team reports, your direct reports, to know how far they are progressing, if they are progressing, and how far they have gone towards those goals and objectives too. And more importantly, the metrics are important because that's how you know, you and your team know objectively if you have arrived at those objectives, if the key milestones have been achieved and crossed. So that's why the second ingredient, metrics, is important, which leads us to the third one down here, which is accountability. Accountability means who is responsible for this outcome? Who is responsible for that particular task or that particular milestone? And the accountabilities, one can be held accountable when every person on your team, and yourself included, knows what everybody else is accountable for, which is a high degree of transparency. Right? And so when you have this, when you uphold a culture of performance, it is simply around having those routines and processes around those 3 things: outcomes, metrics, and accountability. If you're a new team leader and you're listening to this and you're recognizing that you know on a high level what to do, but there are a lot of nuances in your particular team, or maybe there's a history and a certain level of culture and politics that you are dealing with. If that is you and you want some help in how do I navigate my particular situation, then I invite you to work with me. Below in the description, the very first link is an application for my mentorship program that I talked about earlier. And this is where every single week I provide live training on how do you navigate through culture, through politics as well, and how do you become a new boss, that one where your team respects and trusts your leadership. So if you are serious about producing that outcome to be able to be an effective leader and to keep continuously rising in your leadership, then click the link below, send in your application, and I look forward to working with you on the inside. And step number 5 starts with the letter T, and T stands for tend to your new relationships. So let's go back to the story about my member, my client from my mentorship program. Once he started to build this collaborative cadence, once he started to articulate how he planned to lead his teams, once he met one-on-one individually with all members of his direct reports, and once he was able to communicate the vision and the mission and help them align what's most important to the values of the company, once he did that, within the first month, in less than 1 month of his new promotion into his new boss, the team of direct reports already started to open up to him. They already started to receive his ideas, and some of them started to become true believers, excited about the vision and the changes he was proposing. So the only step that remained was to tend to his new relationships. So what that means is that after you become promoted to a new boss, you will have new peers. You will have new managers. You will have a completely different level of executive leaders that you are reporting to. And don't forget to tend to those relationships, to build meaningful relationships with those individuals, your new peers as well. Because this is what allows you to build alliances sooner rather than later. And when you start to tend to those relationships, you're tending to those relationships in a completely different level as a supervisor and a leader of teams. So it's very easy to be caught up after a new promotion, to be so caught up in focusing on your direct reports and trying to manage those relationships beneath you. And it's so easy to get so caught up in that we tend to neglect the peers, our new level peers, and our new level managers that are above us that used to be more than 1 degree of separation, but now they're directly above us. So don't forget to tend to those relationships, because once the person in my mentorship program started to now tend to those relationships, this is where he had other managers who were peers in different departments also get excited about how he was leading his teams, and he became kind of like a spokesperson in the company in helping other managers to develop their teams as well once they've noticed how well operated his teams were. right? So those are the 5 steps on how you can manage your former peers after a promotion. Remember, it's a 5-step process, C.L.O.U.T. So now that you are a new boss, congratulations for stepping up in your leadership level. As I mentioned before, you're going to have senior management who you are going to be reporting to, that you're responsible and your accountabilities towards senior management. And it's important to build those relationships. So what do you do next? If you are serious about becoming effective as a new leader, then I have another video where I talked about how do you communicate with your senior management as a team leader. And that video is coming up right next. Stay tuned and I'll see you there.